Hello everybody and welcome to today's briefing around the Worker Protection Act of 2023. My name is Carly and I'm the consultant from ECP Safeguarding who's going to talk you through this briefing together today. So let's first just explore what the legal context and foundation is around prevention of sexual harassment in the workplace, which of course is the key focus of the Worker Protection Act of 2023. Now, when we think about wider legislation which helps to outlaw and define what sexual harassment is, we have previous documentation such as the Equalities Act of 2010. Within section 26 of this act, we had a rather neutral statement around what sexual harassment was and outlawing it within the context of somebody's workplace. When we think about the consequences for the perpetrator of such conduct outlined within this legislation, it outlined areas such as including disciplinary action or even up to and including dismissal itself. When we think about how sexual harassment is widely more defined, it's actually where any person engages in unwanted conduct of a sexual nature, and that conduct has the purpose of affecting or violating somebody else's dignity, creating perhaps an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or even offensive environment. And although the Equalities Act helped outline to us what it is, forbidding it to happen, it was very much a neutral statement around the role and obligations of the employer to take actions to prevent the harm happening for its employees itself. And it's this gap which the Worker Protection Act of 2023 looks to fill. This piece of legislation very much outlines a new legal duty for all employers to take action around reasonable steps of prevention to ensure all its employees aren't experiencing this type of harm within the workplace itself. And it very much came into force as of the 26th of October 2024. All employers must take these reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment of employees through the course of their employment. And the key words highlighted within legislation are those areas around reasonable steps and prevention. And in today's briefing, we're going to help unpack what those terms are so employers have a wider understanding of where the starting points are in terms of this new legal duty and obligation. Because as part of this law, if an employer is felt to have breached those duties and it hits a tribunal level, the tribunal itself could order the employer to pay up to a 25% compensatory award to the employee who has been affected. Huge implications, therefore, on all employers across all sectors should they not adhere to this new legal duty. So let's consider then, what could be some conduct or behaviours which could quantify as this form of harm of sexual harassment itself? And as we can see from the list here provided, coming from supportive documentation and guidance, such as that from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, it can include a variety of different words, behaviours and actions themselves. And it's these types of things which we need to consider raising the profile of awareness to all our employees within our policies and procedures to ensure there is clarity of understanding of what is and certainly what is not okay in the context of their behaviours themselves. And as much as we're going to touch on some areas to reflect around policy and procedures, of course, when we're looking to include additive around new legislation and guidance, such as the Worker Protection Act itself, often that means for all organisations, we need to start with a needs analysis. Thinking very broadly about our topics here on the screen. How well do you know the demographic of your employees and staffing teams? Are there particular roles or those with responsibilities who might be at greater risk of this type of harm? How are we being proactive and preventative in safeguarding those employees? Equally, what are the work spaces and places like according to those roles, according to our organisation itself? What are therefore the environmental considerations we should have? How do we map areas of risk and areas of need to make sure, again, we have that preventative action in place? How clear are all our employees on the do's and do nots within their behaviours? The list we previously looked at supplied by the Equalities and Human Rights Commission as to what types of sexual harassment could be defined as. And how are we ensuring there's clear clarity on that our organisation doesn't accept or tolerate these behaviours, because we provide very clear messaging within our code of conduct, our staff professional behaviour policies. And like all policies, how regularly are they reviewed, updated, and those updates cascaded and shared across our staffing teams and networks? Because as much as we want to ensure there's clarity of messages around their behaviour, understanding what this risk is, and having that zero tolerance in terms of actually allowing these behaviours to take place, we also need to promote to staff what is the responding and reporting mechanisms we have there within our organisation itself, should anyone either be involved with, affected by, or witness these types of behaviours of others within the course of their work, who and how to report those concerns to. And it's from that need analysis that actually devises for us this aspect aligned to reasonable steps. Because of course, when we think about this very ambiguous term within the legislation itself, the ambiguity is deliberate because of those actions, those steps may naturally vary according to the nuances there within your organisation itself. It's naturally going to vary employer to employer depending on things such as the size of the organisation, the sector within which you work, the working environments, those spaces and places, and of course the wider resources you have available to you. But regardless of sector, regardless of size, this legal duty applies to all employers. No one is exempt now on the back of this passing of law, because every employee, regardless of the role, the sector, what they do, should be entering into the course of their work and feeling safe to do so, not being worried or affected by serious harm which can have not only short-term but long-term impact, such as the topic of sexual harassment and misconduct. So as much as taking these duties seriously, starting with that needs analysis, informed then what your reasonable steps and actions may be, we can also consider that actually this shouldn't be a mere tick box activity in relation to these legal changes, but instead having the sole focus and purpose of ensuring that your workplace feels safe for anybody who's engaging with it. Not solely those that use your service, but those who work within it as well. So it very much should be a holistic action plan response to addressing the compliancy of this legislation itself. And it's these themes which often we tie in to those wider holistic reflections. Areas such as organisational culture. All senior leads and managements, of course, have a defining influence on the workplace culture and the tone of expectations around staff behaviour and workplace civility. So it needs to run through every staffing level, organisationally. We need to ensure that those senior leads not only define, but also embed, live and breathe those organisational values, that they role model and behave in a way that underpins dignity, respect and inclusion within the workplace. To put another way, that they lead from the top in the right example. We also, of course, come back to those frameworks, those support mechanisms from staff, the proactivity around reviewing your policies and procedures. A formal policy change won't actually help to create a new culture around this prevention of sexual harassment alone, but it's still important to have that scaffolding in place to help outline what those steps and actions taken by your organisation are to provide clarity to your staff on that matter. The policy should clearly define what sexual harassment is, give clear, tangible examples, and outline that it's everybody's duty in the prevention and the tackling of it. It should also outline what your responding and reporting mechanisms are to ensure steps that actions and employees would take if they wish to raise a complaint, and how the complaint will be managed, and what the timescales attributed are to those actions. They should be written in clear, accessible language, avoiding areas such as human resources jargon that could help to provide confusion or lack of clarity to what your organisation is doing in response. You should actively seek to include the voice and views of your staffing teams and demographic in terms of ensuring they feel very much part of the creation of these systems to help support that culture shift and change. And it also helps to create almost a speak up culture, which should always be encouraged. All employees should feel reassured that they will not suffer any detriments if they were to report matters of concern that either they've had involvement with or perhaps had witness to through the course of their professional conduct. Simply having those policy and procedures in place, we need to make sure that they will be tested in terms of the knowledge, in terms of the embedment, the engagement of those systems as well. And it should be very much that forensic, that proactive reviewing annually, if not more regularly, to make sure they're adhered to by everybody. Organisations should also consider including sexual harassment as a matter of discussion at board meetings in order that senior managers may be satisfied, and ensuring that reasonable steps are in place to proactively prevent this from happening through the course of an employee's life journey with the organisation itself. And then, of course, there's raising awareness, raising profile and understanding through your training and development offer. There should be regular training for all staff so they clearly understand what this conduct is and their role in preventing and addressing it. Where reasonably practical to be able to do so, examples should be used. And attendance at these events should be mandatory, making sure that all engagement is securely held and documented on your single central record to help evidence those who we may need to adhere and engage in alternative methods. It should be a continued subject covered and discussed through things such as induction, onboarding, regular reviews within employees in situ to help ensure there's always that opportunity for employees to have spaces where they're able to voice and share concerns if they were to experience. And of course, any actions that employers could take to raise the employees' awareness should include things such as workshops, discussion forums, sharing of experiences if safe to do so, and appropriate online forums as well. Lots of different mechanisms we can do to support their engagement. Risk assessments. Employers should risk assess vulnerabilities and reduce opportunities for sexual harassment to occur, identifying those weak spots from those auditings you start with. And then, of course, reporting channels and investigations. We need to acknowledge reporting an allegation of sexual harassment is a huge thing for an employee to do. It takes courage and strength. And employers need to ensure that actually their employee feels safe, feels supported through that process, and that they have confidence that you as the employer will take appropriate, prompt and proactive steps to safeguard them and others. So reporting pathways should be well promoted. There should be clear timescales attached, and employees should have the opportunity to raise matters through a series of different mechanisms. Any evidence of discriminatory behaviour or harassment amongst staff needs to be investigated. We need to provide clarity around what those actions taken will be, what they'll look like, to set those clear messages that it will not be tolerated. And where reasonably practical to do so, employee confidentiality should be maintained. And where it's not possible, this should be explained to the employee with explicit permission to share those details. Thank you so much for joining us in this brief webinar here today. If what you've engaged with thus far is making you think more about this topic, and you'd like to reach out to us centrally to see what we could do to support your organisation with training, consultancy, auditing, please get in touch. Our details are here on the screen. Thank you so much for stopping by, and we hope to collaborate with you again in the future. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.